Hey, what's up, guys? This is Kamen Rider 64. How you guys doing today? And I'm back with another video. And for today's video, I'm gonna be talking about why I somewhat think that Kamen Rider is kind of difficult to adapt here in the West for many different reasons. Because Kamen Rider, we so far we've had two adaptations so far of Kamen Rider. Saban's Mask Rider and Kamen Rider Dragonite, both of which didn't perform too well. But I think Dragonite probably could have performed well if it was had a much better time slot and the toys came out earlier, and if it was marketed more. And I guess maybe if it was probably put on a more popular channel network instead of the CW, like maybe Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network or anything higher. Because the CW was pretty much, I don't think a lot of people watched the CW at the time, you know. They're only just like a small amount of people. But I think if Dragonite was on either in a popular channel network like the ones I mentioned earlier, it probably would have been getting a higher following and got more views and such. Of course. And Kamen Dragonite was actually a pretty good show. It even won a daytime Emmy award for outstanding stunt coordinator work, something like that. A stunt, action scene, something like that. Unfortunately, Dragonite just didn't find its footing. Unfortunately, but it was still a great show nonetheless. Great story, great characters, and how they used Kamen footage was pretty much outstanding and pretty much great. So to call Kamen Rider Dragonite a failure will probably be an understatement. It'll probably not worth it. Because Kamen Rider Dragonite was just overall amazing, and the theme song still kicks ass to this day. Saban's Mask Rider, of course, it's understandable why that show flopped, because that show was just unwatchable. It was just it was more of a comedy instead of an action-oriented action show. Instead of like similar to what Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and VR Troopers were, which also was just around the time came out before actually. And both Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and even VR Troopers, and I will say VR Troopers more to an extent, had basically more of an action tone to it, a dark tone to it, a serious tone to it. Mask Rider was just too campy and too kiddie-ish and stuff, and like the whole thing with Furbus was just Furbus was a really pointless and unnecessary character that, in my opinion, really didn't need to be there. He should have been like in like a preschool show, like maybe Sesame Street or Barney the Dinosaur, any one of those other puppet like costume like shows geared towards kids. Between the Lines, The Adventures of Dudley the Dragon, and Bear in the Big Blue House, and those kind of shows. Furbus will fit well in those type of shows, but like in an action show that's supposed to be action pack and all that stuff, yeah, no, he just didn't fit the vibe. So, you know, that's one of the reasons why Saban's Mask Rider failed, and like the music just didn't fit well with the show, anyways. And the music will eventually be used later on for Digimon. I do have a video to talk about why Saban's Mask Rider failed, and I will get to that video soon. But before I make that video, there is another video I probably will make before that. It's about for those you don't know, the actor that played Prince Dex, Mask Rider, T.J. Roberts. Unfortunately, he passed away back in 2022, and many of us were not aware of it until a fan reached out to T.J. Roberts' dad and asked him, and then he spilled the details about his passing, which is sad and depressing. Uh, but I have a video. I'm gonna come out with a video talking about T.J. Roberts. Rest in peace video to him, tribute video, and I'll get to that soon. But yeah, Saban's Mask Rider, it failed, and yeah, it didn't have a good show. The toys weren't good and all. You know. Wait, hold on. Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry, my brother, he needed to come in to get the shopping cart and some soap because he's gonna do laundry. So I'm back. So yeah, like I said, Saban's Mask Rider, it was just a commercial failure overall. It is a bummer that that this show didn't catch on. I mean, I think if the show took a totally different direction, like if they got rid of Furbus and like and made it more of an accent tone, it probably would have caught on well. And they also said that the toys didn't sell well, but I think maybe because the show just didn't catch people's eyes. It probably you know was one of the main factors to why the toys didn't sell well. So yeah, so unfortunately, Kamen Rider just hasn't had a great surgeons here in the West in terms of the adaptations and other stuff. But I do kind of start to think that one of the reasons why Kamen Rider is kind of difficult to adapt is because it's a very many different reasons. One, Kamen Rider kind of has like a different story structure compared to Super Sentai, because with Super Sentai, almost every epi- with Super Sentai, almost every episode is pretty much kind of somewhat necessarily the same. Well, with some differences thrown in there, like the Sentai team, they fight like a monster. The monster grows big, giant robots. You know, they summon their Megazords, the mecha giant robots to fight them, defeat the monster, and cut clean, like and just like that. So it's pretty much kind of like a monster of the day kind of like storyline. So there are some storylines that we throw in there, like some of the Sentais in the '90s will have like some kind of storylines continuing like one episode after another. But recently, like later on in later Sentais, they were just like every episode will be like it's a monster of the day type of thing. Once in a while they'll put like some kind of storyline in there. And Power Rangers does that too. Like once in a while they'll have like a two-parter or three-parter or four-parter or whatever arcing storyline or something. Or sometimes it'll just be a monster of the day type of thing. Adventure of the day type of thing. You know. That's pretty much what the Neil Saban season's been doing ever since, unlike the Saban and the Disney seasons, earlier Saban and Disney seasons, and even the Hasbro era is doing what the Neil Saban era did. And I guess there were some three-part organized storylines in there, but other than that, that's pretty much all. But with Kamen Rider, so yeah, Super Sentai just kind of has that storyline format sometimes. But with Kamen Rider, however, Kamen Rider is pretty much like every episode is pretty much kind of connected together, and every episode kind of ends off on a cliffhanger, leading on to the next episode, basically. At least that's from the gist of what I get from the certain Kamen Rider series that I've seen so far. Every episode ends off with a cliffhanger, and that cliffhanger will leave off to the next episode, and so forth and so forth. And Kamen Rider Dragonite even kind of copied this in a way. Like with Kamen Rider, an episode will end with something happening, like a dark secret revealed or something, or a Kamen Rider engaged with a battle with another rider or something, and then it cuts to the episode ends, and then the next episode continues on from that cliffhanger, you know. And Kamen Rider seems to have like a different story structure, and also the fact is, I think, Kamen Rider tends to be a bit too violent and dark when it comes to some of the storylines. I mean, not saying that Super Sentai isn't dark too, but Super Sentai, they managed to find a way to work around that. And I guess they probably could do the same with Kamen Rider, but there will probably be some difficulty. Like, for example, like if they were to adapt Kamen Rider Kuga or Agito in the early 2000s, they probably would have some trouble trying to reverse around how they're going to use the footage and such. Because, for many different reasons. I mean, that's just from how I feel about it. Now, sure, when they did adapt Ryuki in the Dragonite in 2009, they did manage to work around some of the dark elements and some of the violent scenes happening in Ryuki. And I guess it did kind of work. Like Kamen Rider Tiger, or Kamen Rider Axe, its final event, where, his Ab monster drags the opponent on the ground and then he stabs the opponent and lifts him up in the air. I actually thought they were going to cut that scene out because it was too violent, but it still made it in the show. And speaking of that, because Saban's Master Rider, because Kamen Rider Dragon in Kamen Rider Black RX, his weapon, the Rebel Cane, he basically destroys the monster in a violent way, where he just stabs the monster and then he pulls out his Rebel Cane and the monster explodes. And Saban's Master Rider, they pretty much censor that, just like when Dex summons the Electro Saber just shoots a smaller beam that shoots at the opponent, and the monster explodes. So yeah, so they kind of censor that. I mean, a lot of people. I know a lot of people were actually upset about that. Said, "Oh my god, I can't believe why would they do that?" But if you think about it, guys, it is kind of understandable why they did it because you know, you know, they can't show Dex like stabbing the monster, and like this was the '90s, like and this show was kind of like geared towards kids and stuff like that, so they can't show violence things. Now, I do think in VR Troopers they did show JP stab the monster with his laser lance command. I think so. I guess I don't know if they didn't show that, or maybe they kind of did something to where I feel like he didn't stab the monster with his laser lens command. I don't know. Well, I remember that it was said that JB did used to stab the monsters, Grim Lord's monsters, or with his laser lens command or whatever. I don't know if they said censor his laser lens command. I don't know, but and yeah, I do think some of the Metal Heroes. Speaking of VR Troopers, I think some of the Metal Hero series, I think they did kind of feature some violent scenes as well. But I think Saban managed to work around that because Metal Heroes, unlike Super Sentai and Kamen Rider, and even Ultraman, they were actually geared towards a much older audience, basically. And that's why Metal Heroes always had a bit of a darker tone to them and more violent scenes to them. But back with Kamen Rider, it just feels like that Kamen Rider just seems to tend to be a bit more violent, especially with the earlier Heisei series, for many different reasons. I think in the later seasons, like the later Heisei era, I think maybe they became less violent. Like from Deno and onward, I think they became less violent and doing less graphical stuff. I think Hibiki did feature some graphical stuff like blood and such. That's just what I think. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I think Kamen Rider is kind of difficult to adapt. And also, I also think that maybe I think between the two, between Super Sentai and Kamen Rider, I think Super Sentai is just something that's much easier to adapt and much easier to just market more. Because with Super Sentai, you have like a team of 5 or sometimes 3 uh, superheroes, 5 different characters, 3 different characters, well, different personalities, combine their powers together to beat this and fight evil. And Kamen Rider just sometimes will feature like one character or multiple characters, one character and a couple side characters, secondary writers, and and they have to try to come with story from there. Like you see, like how things from there work together. I mean, that's just what I think. It kind of feels like that Super Sentai is way more easier to adapt than Kamen Rider is, for many different reasons. So that's pretty much kind of just what I got from it. I think that's all I gotta say about the situation. That's one of the reasons why I think Kamen Rider was kind of hard to adapt for many different reasons. I mean, and because think about it, sometimes it feels like a team of superheroes sells better than just a singular superhero. Sometimes, from the way I look at it. Now, of course, because with a team of superheroes, you have different characters with different personalities and see how each of them work off each other. Whereas with a single superhero, it's just about this one single superhero and the struggles that he or she has to like face sometimes. And sometimes, like he or she will team up with another secondary person. In case with Kamen Rider, secondary rider to like battle evil. And sure, there will be like multiple riders and such. But even just so them, the secondary riders, secondary characters, they will get like storylines dedicated to them too as well. Aside from just the main hero, the main rider, you know. So yeah, that's what I really think. And I think what Super Sentai can offer way more action scenes because they can do such and such. I don't know if I'm really explaining it right, and I think there's probably stuff I'm missing, but that's kind of like so far. I mentioned all the things that I think the other reason why. But yeah, you guys can let me know what you think. Do you guys agree? Do you guys think that Kamen Rider is difficult to adapt for many different reasons compared to Super Sentai? And if there's any details I missed and some things I don't understand, you can feel free to let me know. I'm not saying that Kamen Rider is not difficult to not hard to that can't be adapted. It actually can. It's just that I think sometimes it's kind of difficult for many different reasons, and such. At least if I understand it right. But Super Sentai feels like it's way more easier to adapt. That's what I think. But yeah, you can feel free to let me know what you think. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, and all that jazz. And I'll be having more videos coming out soon. And also, are you guys sad that we're not going to get any more Kamen Rider adaptations? Yeah, it feels like we're never going to get it again. It sucks, but it is what it is. We'll just watch to set up with Saban's Master Rider and Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. But, you know, I guess. Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry, my SD card cut out again because I had too much storage, and so yeah, put it back up. But I'm gonna wrap up this video here, and yeah, we're at to settle with just Saban's Master Rider and Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. Even though I prefer Kamen Rider Dragon Knight overall, Saban's Master Rider, yeah, it has some decent moments, but this wasn't all that great. But also, rest in peace to TJ Roberts. I'll be having a video about him coming out soon, so you can be on the lookout for that soon. So, the future for Kamen Rider is still looking bright. And maybe with Kamen Rider Series coming out, being streamed here internationally, and maybe it's kind of a good sign because this leads to like Kamen Rider getting more exposure here in the West, and maybe Kamen Rider can be given a similar treat that Ultraman's given, has been given for years. Maybe we might get a some kind of company might try their hand in making a Kamen Rider animated movie, like how the company made Ultraman Rising that came out on Netflix last year. And maybe some people might make their own. Americans right here might make their own Kamen Rider theme something or something. Well, I heard that the Ant-Man costume in the MCU is inspired by Kamen Rider, I think. Well, I guess I can see it there. Heck, so I still don't think that Spider-Man is kind of feels somewhat on Kamen Rider based with the bug eyes. That's just me. But yeah, the future for the franchise is looking great, and maybe it might get the same treatment that Ultraman is. Too bad it didn't get the same treatment that Super Sentai did when it was adapted over here to a successful franchise, which became, we all know, as Power Rangers. Super Sentai has an adaptation franchise, Power Rangers. And too bad Kamen Rider didn't get that, but, it is what it is. Sometimes there's something that's just not meant to be, or things probably can't work. Just depends on how they're executed. But yeah, do you guys think that the future is bright for the Kamen Rider franchise? And do you agree with me that the reasons why I think that it's kind of hard and difficult to adapt somewhat? Well, you can let me know in the comment section below. And I'll be seeing you guys later. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and all that jazz. And more videos coming up in the future. This is Kamen64, signing out. Hey, shun!